Welcome over to Automotive World, everyone. I'm your host, Hyundai Mystery, and we are back. We have May 2024 sales figures for Hyundai Motors of America. And Hyundai is also killing it as well. They are up. But we're going to go through the entire press release. We're going to go through everything. And we're going to see where they're doing good, if they're doing anything bad. We're going to talk about that. But let's start off with total sales being up in May, 12%. Year-to-date sales also saw an increase of 2%, a best ever in May for the Ioniq 5, the Ioniq 6, the Tucson, that would be the hybrid electric vehicle, the Santa Fe, that would also be the hybrid one, and the Palisade, and the Santa Cruz as well is up there. Hyundai also as well with their May retail sales up 9% year over year. The volume was led by the Palisade and the Ioniq 5, Santa Fe. Those were the leaders for the month. And EV sales are up 42% year over year. Now, we saw obviously with Kia, their sales were up in this volatile EV market. But for Hyundai to also have growth and have it year over year, 42%. That's really good to see that. And that's a really strong increase. For the total May sales, they sold 78,485 units. Excuse me. That is compared to May 2023. That's a 12% increase overall. Hyundai set total sales records in May for Ioniq 5, up 82%. Ioniq 6, up 13%. For the Tucson, the hybrid, up 54%. That Santa Fe hybrid, up 116%. The Palisade, up 45%. And even the Santa Cruz is up 2%. Hyundai total EV sales in May were up 42%. So Hyundai is killing it across the board. And we look at for May total sales, like I said, in this year's month of May, 2024, 78,485 units compared to last year, 70,001 units. So just a little bit over 70,000, just a little bit. That is a 12% increase. And even when we see that year-to-date sales, that is a 2% increase. So that is huge. Let's get into the chart, though. This is the most important thing. The Elantra. Keep in mind with the Elantra, that is going to include things like the Elantra N as well. And with the Elantra N, we have that new refresh model. Hyundai has had a lot of trouble, especially in America here, getting it out to dealers. So the Elantra numbers are going to have some anomalies in there. They don't unfortunately split it up by Elantra N and N-line and things, but just keep in mind we do have some anomalies here in these numbers. So for the month of May 2024, 13,311 units versus last year in the month of May, 15,605 units. That is down 15%, and that year-to-date sales, we are at 50,273 for 2024. Last year-to-date sales for Elantra, 61,314. So that is also down 18%. Still a strong seller, don't get me wrong. Especially once we get that Elantra N model, I think those sales will pick up a little bit, but definitely still down, but it's a strong seller. Some questions there, but we'll get to that later. The Ioniq 5, killing it. Almost 4,500 units this year compared to 2,500 units this last year in the month of May. 82% increase. And year-to-date sales last year versus this year. Last year they were at 10,500 units, a little bit over that. This year we're almost at 15,000 units, 14,973 units. That's a 43% increase. So the Ioniq 5 is absolutely killing it. They're doing great. The Ioniq 6 is doing just as well. Not selling as many units as Ioniq 5, but doing still pretty well percentage-wise. Under 1,000 last year at 971 for May. This year, month of May, 1,099 units. It's a 13% increase. When we look at the year-to-date sales, 2,083 last year in 2023 year-to-date. This year, just under 6,000. We're two under 5,998. That is a 188% jump. Huge. Kona. This is also, like I said, this, the Kona N. There's also that model as well. Kona is up though, absolutely killing them, absolutely killing it. Great moneymaker for Hyundai. 8,308 units this year, month of May. Last year, 5,613. That's up 48%. So huge gains there. And year-to-date sales last year, 31,664 units. This year we're at 39,635 units. That is up 25%. Huge. And a big lot of volume there. Huge for Hyundai. The Nexo. Rest in peace. Hyundai is still doing fuel cell and things like that, but for the Nexo, I mean, they didn't even sell 100 last year. They haven't even sold 100 this year. This year in the month of May, last year in the month of May, they sold 16. This year in the month of May, they sold 6. That's nothing to talk about there. There's no insight for that. Obviously, that vehicle is only sold in California, but that's just essentially it's a meaningless model, meaningless stats. That doesn't really affect anything. The Palisade, though, just like the Telluride, the Palisade is, you can argue, the bigger brother, the brother to the Telluride for Kia. This year in the month of May, 10,147 units compared to last year's 7,013. That's a 45% jump, and we are up year-to-date sales, up 33%, from 33,500 last year to over 45,500 this year. So, just like the Telluride is for Kia, the Palisade is absolutely printing them, and I mean it, printing them money. It's free money. When you walk, whether you walk in the dealership or not, it's free money. We come to the Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz saw some marginal jumps for this year. In the month of May last year, 3,526. This year, 3,603. That's a 2% jump. Overall year-to-date sales, they sold last year 16,423 units. This year, we're at 14,976 for year-to-date. So that is a 9% decrease, but I think they'll very easily, make up those numbers again. So I'm not really too worried about that. Santa Fe. This one, a little bit interesting as well, but also sells them a ton of units. Not really too much to worry about here. 10% jump. Last year selling 10,039. This year just under 11,000. They were just three units short at 10,997. It's a 10% jump month to date. For 2023 to 2024 for the month of May. And for year-to-date sales, they are down slightly, 5%, 49,500, a little bit over that last year. Right now we're at 46,819. They'll catch up. I'm not worried about that, but technically it is a little bit down. The Sonata, really interesting in this market to see sedan growth, especially with the K5 having those issues getting to the dealer lots. Last year's month of May, 4,321. This year, 6,700. 55% jump. Huge jump. Especially in a market where nobody really wants sedans anymore. And year-to-date sales, we have jumped up 7%. Last year from 23,500 on the dot to 25,212. So really interesting. Like I said, in the market when nobody wants a sedan, when everybody wants a pickup truck and an SUV, Sonata had room to grow. So it's really good to see that, for the heart. The Tucson. This is a big seller for them. This year for the month of May, they sold 17,371. Last year's month of May, 18,038. So that is a 4% drop. Year-to-date sales are also down 5%. This year's year-to-date sales, 78,565 versus last year's 82,884. I think though, Tucson is a big seller. They sell a lot of them. It's very popular. They will, easily still make that up. So not really too worried about that, but it is also technically down. And the Venue. This one is also, again, interesting. Last year in the month of May, 2,413 were sold. This year, 2,494 were sold, so almost 2,500, 3% jump. Year-to-date sales are down 21%. Last year selling 13,664. This year we're at 10,827. Can they still catch up? I think they could very easily. Not also too worried about that, but definitely still down technically. So we're not gonna say that it's up. Looking at the list overall, if I was to do an analysis on this, the Ioniq 5 did great. Ioniq 6 did great. Kona did great. Nexo, fuel cell, only in certain markets in California. This is an anomaly. So there is no insight for this. This is when you can't even sell 100 units of a car and you can only sell 6 in that month. This model has no meaning to the lineup. The Palisade absolutely printing cash. Santa Cruz still showing increase in popularity despite year-to-date being down. Not worried about that. Next month they'll have that up. So Santa Cruz is still doing quite well. Santa Fe as well. I'm not worried about that. They're still selling a ton. Growth is up for the month. They'll easily catch back up to that. Sonata, very surprised, very happy to see huge sales, huge growth on year-to-date and month-to-month from last year to this year. Tucson, not worried about it. They'll make it up within the next month or two. The Venue as well, also really not too worried about it. They'll make it up within the next month or two. The only one really, the Elantra just...
9:06 p.m.
Excuse me, sorry about that. The only one maybe I could say, and I'm not worried about it because obviously the Elantra N model isn't out. And even when that N model comes out, it's not like they're going to sell 10,000 of them. They're not going to sell even probably 5,000. So... the Elantra, that's the only one that's kind of the biggest one on the board that kind of, grabs your eye. Keep in mind, though, they did still sell 50,000 of them. So, I think with the way the Elantra numbers are going, I think the Elantra will be fine as well. But it is interesting. I would keep my eye on the Elantra and see what happens to that. Because obviously what is going to happen with the Elantra if we start seeing slower sales on that model there, that will correlate with the Sonata as well. So the Elantra is the only one that's kind of, I don't want to say I'm necessarily worried about it, but I got some questions, especially where the Elantra N model is. We've been waiting for it for over a year or two now, the new redesigned one. So, like I said, not too worried, but I got some questions, Just raising my eyebrows a little bit. Overall, analysis-wise, I don't think really Hyundai... I don't think there's really anything necessarily, even though there were some models that were down, it was ever so slightly, and they'll very easily within the next month or two make it up. So I don't think there's really anything negative to say here, honestly. Like I said, the Elantra is kind of the only one just because of the discrepancy. They did still sell, it still sold 50,000 units. That's where they are right now, which is still up compared to every other model. So... even for May sales, it was the top seller at, 13,311 units. So yeah, the sales were down, but it is still their best selling car. So like I said, not really any problems, but just questions. But overall, I think Hyundai did great. I think Hyundai killed it. I think Hyundai, in my opinion, did, probably even better maybe than even Kia did, especially on the EV side. But there's nothing really bad to say about any of these numbers. Let me know what you guys and girls think down below of this. Is Hyundai in trouble for whatever reason? Or, if you were, if you contributed to any of these numbers, maybe you bought a Hyundai, which one did you buy? How's your experience with it? Do you like it or not? Let me know what you guys think down below of, if you own one, and also just these numbers as well. Are you surprised? Do you think this is a fad? Is it going to go away? But let me know what you guys think down below. This is going to do it for now. And like always, thanks for watching, everyone.